Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, which is the fourth in a series of webinars from the project Journeys. And today's topic will be the child liaison role in Barnahus. My name is Libertad Ruiz Costa, and I am the project coordinator at Save the Children Sweden for the project Journeys. Before we start, I would like to give you some information. As you can see, you have all been muted and the camera is off for all of you during the whole webinar. It's also good that all of you know that we are recording this webinar. Hopefully Zoom has asked you for a consent in a message. And the recording will be available on the Child Hub platform within the next coming days. If you have any technical issues or questions, please use the chat option. If you have content-related comments and questions to the speakers, you can use the Q&A. So if you look down on the screen, you have the chat option and you have the Q&A. So the Q&A for questions for the speakers and the chat if you, for example, have technical issues or other questions. We also have an intro poll and a feedback poll, one before starting and one before closing. And we would appreciate it very much if you could take just a few minutes to answer the questions before starting and when closing. This is information that is super important for us and valuable for when we continue the project. So before we start the webinar, I will ask Heidi to launch the intro poll and the participants to please answer the questions before we continue with the webinar. So just take about 2 minutes to answer the questions and then we will continue. Okay, thank you very much for answering the questions. Let's continue. Martin, you may change the slide, please. Okay, so let's go through the agenda for this webinar. We will start off with giving you a very short and brief introduction to the project, the Journeys project, so you will get a bit of context. After that, I will invite Martin Herrgård, psychologist at Save the Children Sweden, who will give us a brief history of the Barnahus model and background of implementing a child liaison in the Barnahus model. After that, Helen Kelly will join us, who is a youth advocate at Barnahus West in Ireland, and talk about the child liaison role in an Irish context. That will be followed up by Elisabeth Kjellander, who is the child liaison in Sweden at Save the Children Sweden. We were supposed to have Linda Jonsson join us, who is a professor in social work at Marie Cederschiölds University, and she was supposed to talk about the functions of the child liaison. Unfortunately, she couldn't join us today, but we are hoping to hear more about her work at the end conference of the project in November. We have a recorded interview with Anna Pettersson, who is a social worker at Barnahus Linköping. And after that, we will make time for some discussions and some Q&A. We will gather the questions you put in the Q&A besides the chat and ask the questions to the speakers. Before we finish up for today, we will listen to Sofia Melen Moadi, analyst at Barnafrid Linköping, and she will tell us more about the upcoming end conference in November in Linköping. We can, next slide, Martin. Thank you. So I'm going to give you a really short introduction to the project. It's a pretty big project. We are a lot of partners. As you can see here, we have Save the Children Sweden, we have the University of Linköping, Marie Cederschiölds University, the Council of the Baltic Sea States, we have Bonigi, Tosla in Ireland, and Tadleholms in Hungary. Next slide. So Journeys is about giving children a safe and informed journeys through Barnahus. And we want to do this with a right-based approach. So we want to create access to child-friendly information and participation for the children at Barnahus. We are also aware of that these are separate journeys. It's not the same for every child, and that's why we want to make the child liaison role tailored to compensate for different abilities and life situations that may occur or the needs of each child through Barnahus. Next slide, please. So the target groups are children up to 17 years old who have been victims to crime. Another target group are authorities, practitioners, and civil society organizations involved at Barnahus. And lastly, we also have decision makers, politicians, and the wider public, where we want to work a lot with awareness raising. Next slide, please. Now I will quickly go through what we are doing in the project. So we want to design, pilot, and evaluate an adaptable working method, including the involvement of child liaison, who ensures child victims are heard, feel comfortable and safe to participate effectively. This is what we are going to talk more about today. Next slide. We want to develop, or we are developing, practical and child-friendly tools like an app and a child log to inform child victims and their caregivers and to log their journey through Barnahus. So an app, and I'll go back, an app where it will be clear for the children what will happen and why, who will they meet, and so on, and a child log so they can trace their journey through Barnahus, maybe after they've been there. Next one. We want to raise awareness of the rights of child victims and the role of Barnahus to ensure safe and informed recovery and protection to decision makers, practitioners, and the general public, including children, on a local, regional, national, and EU level. We also want to engage practitioners in mutual learning activities to achieve the Barnahus quality standards across the EU. And lastly, we want to engage with children to ensure a solid child perspective on project design, implementation, outputs, and evaluation. And we're doing this with the help of a YAP group, which is a youth advisory panel, who are helping us throughout the project to give us feedback on everything that we produce. This was a super short introduction to Journeys, the project. And now I will hand over to Martin Hergård, a psychologist at Save the Children. Go ahead, Martin.
Thank you, Libertad. So my name is Martin, and I'm a psychologist at Save the Children, and I'm going to give you a brief history of the Barnahus model and the background to the implementation of a child liaison in Barnahus. Many of the participants here are familiar with the Barnahus model. Despite that, and for you who are not familiar with the model, we feel that it's important to place what we're going to talk about here today, implementing a child liaison in the Barnahus model in a historical context. That's why I'm going to give you this brief history. Let's see, next slide. Barnahus is Icelandic and Swedish for children's house. The forerunner of Barnahus is a child advocacy center model. The first CAC model was set up in 1985 in US Huntsville, Alabama. During the 80s and 90s, the number of child sexual abuse reports greatly increased in the US and in several European countries. Because of that, a multi-disciplinary task force comprising a team of members of law enforcement, child welfare, children's advocates, school personnel, medical and mental health community determined that a child advocacy center was the most comprehensive and effective solution. Before, a child was interviewed repeatedly by many professionals. With the CAC model, all that changed. By coordinating the response of agencies like law enforcement, child protective services, prosecutor's office, advocates, mental health, and medical professionals, the child advocacy model helps ensuring that when a child discloses abuse, they are not re-victimized by the very system designed to protect them. At its core, the CAC model is about teamwork, bringing the agency professionals involved in a case together on the front end, and about putting the needs of the victim first. In 1998, the first Barnahus in Iceland was set up. This was inspired by the CAC model. Barnahus in Iceland differed from the Child Advocacy Center model in that its services were integrated into the national public welfare system and the judicial system. After that, the Barnahus model was spread to the Nordic countries first in Sweden in 2005, and after that in Norway in 2007, and in Denmark in 2013. And now we see new Barnahuses all over Europe every year. The Barnahus model is a fundamental change in the child abuse system. It functions as a child-friendly office under one roof where law enforcement, criminal justice, child protection, as well as healthcare and mental health personnel collaborate and together assess the child's situation and decide on the follow-up. The idea is to gather all relevant actors for children who are suspected of having been subjected to sexual abuse or physical abuse. Gathering the relevant actors means that the child does not have to go around to several offices, but only visit one single place where all the relevant competencies are gathered. This brings together the skills with the hope that the collaboration will be more child-friendly and informed. One way to better understand the Barnahus model is to talk about the Barnahus as divided into 4 different rooms. One room for criminal investigation with police and prosecutor, a second room for protection and care in the form of social services, the third room for physical health in the form of somatic healthcare personnel with doctors and sometimes nurses, and in some cases, even dentists. And then the fourth room for mental health care in the form of representatives of psychiatry, usually a psychologist. Often there are several principals in Barnahuses, one or more for each room, each with its own legislation to relate to and its own main duties. But each actor also needs to relate to the other actor's main focuses. The police main focus is to investigate if a crime has been committed. Prosecutors' main focus is to decide whether charges should be brought and to prosecute the case in court. Social services' main focus is to investigate the need for protection and care. Healthcare professionals' main focus is to provide somatic and mental care. And then, in the middle of all this is the child, who should feel that it gets the right help, that it is being heard, that it understands what's happening in the different room, so that the journey through Barnahus will be as understandable, manageable, and predictable as possible. To meet these needs and rights of the child brings us back to the core of this multidisciplinary model, where cooperation is key. It's not an easy matter to ensure that the child gets what they need, that they feel that they are heard and understood, that they understand what is being done and what will happen, as well as when it will happen. We know that the collaboration between the various actors at Barnahus can be challenging, and that there is a risk that the struggle to attend one's duties and to cooperate ends up in the foreground at the expense of the child's need to understand and to feel heard. However, even if the collaboration between the different rooms is played out in a child-friendly manner, it can be hard to grasp for a child to what has happened and what is to come on the journey through Barnahus. It's a complicated matter that varies from case to case. This is where the function of a child liaison comes into play. Thank you, Libertad.
Thank you, Martin, for that presentation. If any of you have questions, please write them in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. We will continue with Helen Kelly from Barnahus West in Ireland.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me at this webinar. It is exciting to be across Europe. Next slide, please. My background, I spent 14 years, it says there, as a police constable in the West Midlands Police in England, and specialised in areas of domestic violence and child protection. I moved then back to Ireland with my family to the west of Ireland, and done 23 years managing a probation-funded training centre for young offenders. During that time, I became an ASC, Accompaniment Support Services for Children volunteer with a forensic accompaniment. And out of that, then I applied for and got the role of youth advocate. And I say seconded there, that's old police terminology. It's a service level agreement that obviously Barnahus West have with ASC. Next slide, please. The next two slides are just a brief explanation of what ASC do. And obviously, as it says there, they provide support for all young people and their families as they negotiate their way through the criminal justice system in Ireland. I have put their aims and visions, next slide please, up on here. So the slides will be available if anybody wants them and wants further details on anything. The details are all at the end of this slide. Next slide please. Obviously, everyone is aware of Barnahus, and as Martin has just beautifully explained, the objectives of Barnahus. Next slide, please. This is the area just in Ireland, obviously, that we cover. You can see that all in blue is the Barnahus West, which is where I work, and that's approximately 400 kilometres by 200 kilometres in distance. So as you can see, it is quite a large geographical area for one person kind of to cover, but interesting work. If you can, next slide, please. So Barnahus and ASC project, pilot project Ireland, this came about by having an evidence-based research and discussion, and it was decided that it would be an independent, we need an independent NGO to take on my employment so that it would be more transparent when it came to doing the pilot and for the young person. So the aims initially was obviously that child participation be at the forefront of my role. It would be needs-based. The role would have to be continuously monitored. And we'll go through how the secondment or the service level agreement works between Barnahus and ASK to be proactive in the Journeys project. And I have had looking to have involved with the Children's Advisory Group. This young group is a fantastic group of young people who are hosted here by Feroica Ireland. And they have had a lot of input into this Journeys project. Their input has been incredibly important. It has been absolutely energizing to work with them. Fabulous group of young people. Their opinions are very, very articulate, very well thought out, and they have put a lot of time and effort into any feedback that they have given us. And obviously, this is part of the pilot project is that I will give this presentation to International Barnahus. Next slide, please. Okay, so the main objectives as a youth advocate obviously were listen to the child's voice without an agenda, to have an independent person to come and bring the voice of the child, because it often gets lost, and a lot of different agencies that sit around these multidisciplinary teams all have different objectives and different perspectives. So for the youth advocate to come in and hear the child's voice and be able to bring that back, I would advocate on behalf of the child, reinforce all the processes at the levels appropriate to the child's needs, support the child before, during and after agency engagement. This one is very important. We go on, I'll explain that further as we go along. Input into the Journeys project, that I came into that after it had started, so it was kind of playing a little bit of catch up on that one. I found it very interesting to see how different things work and how we all set out with one set of objectives, but we all have a different idea of where that objective is going or coming from. And obviously, with TUSLA in Ireland, we all work within the Lundy model, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Next slide, please. So my first year as a youth advocate at Barnahus West has been very, very interesting. As I've explained, I was employed by one organisation, ASK, and I work out of Barnahus. At the very beginning, I applied for a role, and I can assure you that the role that I'm doing now is nothing like I thought I was applying for 12 months ago. Coming into two different organisations, there's different policies, different procedures, different GPR. The data consent caused a lot of concern. There's two team meetings, there's two managements. So I suppose I was looking at a lot of teething issues, a lot of hurdles to get over, which are still evolving. But I suppose I was very lucky that the two organisations were in the best interest of the child, were more than willing to sit down, and whatever obstacles that we came upon, they would both we would work together to try and come up with a role that was obviously a workable solution in the best interest of the child. And I would take this opportunity to thank both organisations, because they've been very, very good. And obviously I've come in with my ideas as well. They have listened. But I think if people are willing to sit down with the best interests of the child at heart, we will find a solution. Next slide, please. So the referral pathway, all referrals from my role, again, this has evolved in the last year, but all the referrals from my role will come from the Barnahus West manager. And I've put from via there to explain that if on the referral meetings and all the interagency meetings, I attend all of them. There's 2 a week in Barnahus. I attend both of those every week. And while I will be given some clients, I will also have input into what I call my non-clients. So in that, if a therapist, for example, was working with a young person who is not one of my clients, but felt that the young person might benefit from my involvement, they can bring that to the table. And again, the manager will consider that, and my referral will come from the Barnahus West manager. Next slide, please. So very quickly, that's the criteria for our referral. Very self-explanatory. Just the two I will talk about. One is the in discussion, all young people who are in care to be automatic referrals. This is something that is in discussion, and it is felt that it should be that all young people in care should have access to a youth advocate. But again, this is again being discussed, and the red flag case is the next one. In that some cases where consent, etc., would be not forthcoming, we would have to look at maybe why. And again, that is in discussion along with the in care to see how we can hopefully get through to the young people that are not being missed because it's the young person's voice that we want to hear, not the in care or the services. So yeah, and the reopening of closed cases, that one is that when I've finished with it, if a young person wants to bring something back to the table, although we've closed with them, they can come back to me or back to Barnahus. And again, that will be brought to an agency meeting, and it'll be decided whether we'll reopen that case or not, or if there's a reason to reopen that case. Next slide, please. So following initial referral to Barnahus, all children are hopefully, and this is all part of the, and you're all very aware of the Journeys project and the information pack. In an ideal world, the app that is being developed and hopefully launched very soon would be the first point of call, but that's not in existence yet. So we are designing an information pack, which in that will have a mixture of different things. It will be a bag in itself. It will have information, obviously, about Barnahus, who people will see, where they will come to, what the rooms look like. They will have information on myself, what I can do for them, what I can't do for them, the different processes they will have to go through, and an opportunity to ask any questions. And we're also trying to look at putting things into it like gifts, fidget spinners, different things, colouring books, things to try and make the young person feel a little bit more welcome into Barnahus. I attend all the referral meetings, and again, the manager will decide who will be referred to me. Once I have been given a client, I will make contact without delay. If the parent declines the service of a youth advocate, once I've made contact, this will come back to the interagency team. And this is what I was saying earlier, that will be looked at. And obviously we'll have to look and see if there's any other reasons why they might not wish to have a youth advocate involved. I will remain with the young person until that case is closed with Barnahus. But again, there is an option to re-enter that if needed. Next slide, please. The process, once I've been referred to a young person, obviously I receive all the details, I will engage with the client and report back to the multidisciplinary team. When there's a referral, we always have a set date where we'll bring that case back to the table, so there is a time on that. But what I would say again, which is very good for us in Barnahus, is that if I engage with someone and I see a need that is more urgent than the next set date of the meeting, there is an opportunity to bring that immediately back to the Barnahus manager, where we can act on that immediately if required. During obviously the closing meeting with a young person, they are informed they can come back to us at any time. And obviously we'd ask, once you look and see that ask, do court accompaniment. There's obviously, it could be a big gap between the closure of working with a young person within Barnahus to when they might appear at court, because some of the court cases, you all know, go on for a long time. So I will ask the young person at my closing meeting, I'll say, look, when it comes to court, if you want to engage back with me, I can refer you then directly back into the ask court accompaniment services. Obviously during which they can avail of a child-centred pre-trial, and if applicable, accompaniment to DVD viewing and accompaniment for them and their families on their day in court and up to sentencing. Next slide, please. At what stage do I engage with the young person? Well, obviously, young people come to Barnahus Ireland at different stages, because it could be before or after special interview or forensic medical. So initially, if there's a disclosure made, the Gardaí, TUSLA are informed, it's referred to Barnahus, but in that time, consideration has to be given to the collection of forensic evidence. So that might be an acute case which has to be forensically examined immediately, or the next priority might be that the specialist interview, which is the interview with the Gardaí, that might have to take place first, and then obviously then it comes to Barnahus, to the meeting. In any case, obviously the meeting then is held to establish the needs of the young person, and all the needs, and the needs then around that table, the needs of the young person are discussed. That could be anything from their age to their schooling, to their location, to geography, how they get to Barnahus, how they engage, what language they might speak, if there's interpreters needed. Obviously, everything, the needs of that child would have learning disabilities, would have any other kind of physical disabilities, that's all considered at the initial meeting, and plans were put in place then to make it as accessible as possible to that young person. So obviously the safety and welfare of the young person is paramount, but obviously while protecting the potential evidence that might be needed for a court appearance. Next slide, please. This one I think is really, really important because it says obviously there it's so important to know when not to engage with the young person or family. Because as I said earlier, if a young person sometimes that they come to the forensic could be the first thing they come to. So at that time then there's the disclosure is the first thing obviously, and the whole family, as you all are aware, can cause so much trauma in that family, and they can be hit with all sorts of services for therapies, for parent services, for young people, the schools, the social service, everyone's all involved. And what they might not need is another person coming in saying, well, look, I can do this for you, I can help you do this. It's so important to know, to monitor what is going on in that young person and family's life, and to be able to stand back and know when to go into it, or even maybe to go in and say, look, we can help you. What do you actually need right now? Well, okay, this service you're going to, this is important now. This might wait another while. So as it's so important to know when not to engage with the young person or family. Next slide, please. The Lundy model, I'm sure you're all very familiar with the Lundy model, and I know that we're very, very lucky enough to have a speaker present herself during the conference in November, so I would absolutely recommend everyone to attend that one. Next slide, please. So I am going to go through the Lundy model just briefly. These are probably the only slides that I'm actually going to read verbatim, because this is how we operate under the Lundy model in Barnahus West in my role. So obviously the first thing, the space, we have the four headings for the Lundy model: the space, voice, audience, influence, and this would be the space. So to agree a plan of action with the child regarding their advocacy needs, including how often they will link with youth advocates and means of communication. And this plan also includes details of how and when the youth advocate will no longer be involved with them. Now, while this does say make this plan and we have to go by this plan, I think we all have to be very aware that we can all make a plan today and by tomorrow the needs have changed. So we have to be able to adapt to that at every changing moment. Ensure that the children have access to adequate information regarding Barnahus. This again comes from, this is where we're developing the information pack, and hopefully this wonderful app is going to be launched in November. Where information needs to be adapted for children, we have to make sure that they are aware of this need. That's, for example, printing things in different languages, or to have accessibility for people with physical disabilities, etc. So my next one here is highlight the need for interpretation services for children when required. This is something that I feel quite strongly about and have made representation at a higher level too, because there is interpreters will come to forensic medical, to the specialist interview, to meetings with the young person. And we feel very strongly that the interpreters need to be trauma trained, I suppose, equally trauma trained, and be trained very much into what their services are going to be required for this type of work. It's not the type of work that everyone can just do, and a lot of the interpreter services that would be engaged are people who come in thinking, yes, I'm just going to have to be there to interpret. That is their role, but I think what they hear and what they are subject to, that they should be trauma trained and they should be protected themselves and have supervision for that as well. So obviously, in the last one, to ensure that children access Barnahus premises or other associated premises. So that one says there's special interviews. That's covering the geographical area that I showed you earlier, in that there's a large 400 kilometres of distance. So not all young people can get to Barnahus. So we have to make sure that all the child participation and everything is in place in all the premises and offices and centres that we use throughout our geographical region. Next slide, please. So the youth advocate, the voice. So bring the direct voice to the interagency team meetings of the child. When everyone's sitting around the table and you've got someone from TUSA, someone from the guards, social services, therapists, whomever's at the meeting, everyone, I believe, at that meeting has got the child's best interest at heart, but they are coming from that with their own perspective and their own focus, as in the Gardaí will be trying to secure evidence, will be trying to do interviews. You have to bring, my role there is purely to bring the child's voice and say, look, this is what the child is thinking, this is what they want to do, this is how they want to do it. And I have found so far that all the services are willing to accommodate. And in fairness, sometimes I bring up some issues at that meeting that haven't been considered previously, just purely because they just haven't been considered. But once they're mentioned, it's implemented, and then the young people will feel far more safer in that environment. So ask questions of professionals on behalf of the child. So again, sometimes you listen to people talking, might be a non-client for me, and you listen to people talking, you're thinking, well, can I ask why you're doing that? Because it's not something to be asked for. Why is this happening? And I think that does need to be asked. I think as professionals working in this very delicate area, I think we all need to question ourselves and make sure that we are keeping on top of everything. And it's no harm to, as I said, to re-question yourself. So support the child to directly deliver their own thoughts or opinions during contact with Barnahus professionals. Young people in this situation tend to have a lot to say, or not so much a lot to say, but they have their opinions. And you have to listen to the way they think it's going to work. And as much as you can tell a young child that you're going to do a forensic examination, you're going to have an interview, you're going to do this, they'll have their own thoughts on that. So you really, really have to listen and support them and bring that voice. If they're not prepared to bring that voice to the table, because your way of thinking this is going to happen may not be that young person's. And it's good, again, for the professionals to hear what the young person themselves is thinking directly. Support the child to make formal complaints if they wish to do so. Very, very important. It's unfortunate not everyone does things maybe as it quite be should happen, and mistakes can be made. Or I think a young person needs to feel that if they didn't feel that they were accommodated as they should have been, that they have a right to put that forward. And again, I think that should be more seen as a learning curve as well for the professionals to maybe do better. Meet with all children who request contact with youth advocates to explore their advocacy needs. Again, within Barnahus, they have that opportunity in Barnahus West. They have the opportunity to do that. If any young person in Barnahus wishes to meet with me, youth advocate, they can do that without question. Next slide, please. The audience. This is a bit like ensure that the Barnahus professionals have provided adequate information to the children. Again, we come back to the information pack and to the app that's hopefully going to be developed. This should be the starting point of information given to young people, and this is where they can start to ask the questions. Again, I'd like to think this is where I would come in and they can ask me the questions arising from the information that they've been given initially. Ensure communication. This is again back to languages, interpreters, physical premises, etc. Ensure the Barnahus team are actively seeking out the views of the children. I can only speak for obviously Barnahus West, and I would have to say that in every conversation with every young child, is the phrase, is this in the best interest of the child, is repeatedly said by the Barnahus team, which is very refreshing to hear that, and there will be reflection on, is this in the best interest of the child? And it's lovely that that happens, and hopefully that will continue. To support the Barnahus, professionals find alternative ways to meet with children when conventional means are not possible. Again, can be geographical as well. Like I had to bring a young person because of logistics. The child had to come across the country to do an interview. That was again because certain places weren't available. So I suppose we're trying to build up within my role. We're trying to build up knowledge of the accessible sites that we can take young people for special interviews or for meetings with young people to make sure that they are all compliant under the child participation as well. And obviously Barnahus West is fabulous building if you haven't seen it. It's completely child friendly, and it is set up for doing all the specialist interviews, the forensics. It's all completely purpose-built for that. And I would just say as well at this point that was done in collaboration with the Child Advisory Board, and they had an input into the laying out of everything in there, the signage, everything's fabulous. So it is done in a very child-friendly manner. And again, as previously said, work alongside the Barnahus manager to ensure the complaints are taken seriously and dealt with appropriately. Next slide, please. So youth advocate influence. I suppose to remind the Barnahus team to take the views of the children into account when making decisions. Again, I think this does happen at the multidisciplinary agents. It's very much repeated, as I said. Is this in the best interest of the child? I have brought things from the children to the table that have been listened to and they've been acted upon, which is good to see. I ensure the Barnahus team communicate decisions back to the child via myself. Again, anything I have asked from the child, I have received that information and I have relayed that back to the child. and to ensure the Barnahus team are aware of any concerns that the child has expressed to the youth advocate. Again, this happens, any concerns the child has would be brought back to the formalised meetings, but if something was of concern that needed to be brought, that is brought back sooner than that with myself and the Barnahus manager. Next slide, please. So examples of engagement, I suppose these are just a few. I mean, my role started as a 12-month role. It's now gone to, I'm employed until, I think, unless I do something very wrong, until December next year, and it'll be reviewed at that point. I was doing 15 hours a week, but unfortunately I ended up working, I was doing 22.5 hours. So I'm now doing 22.5 hours officially. So I suppose I have got 25 direct cases in that time. Bearing in mind that I didn't have any cases for the first 5 or 6 months, because obviously learning all the systems and learning to work within all the different organisations took a bit of time, and to get data protection, GDPR, everything in place. So in some of the young people that I have supported is, again, as I said, to bringing young people in who've got transport difficulties or for whatever reason can't get there. I will support them to attend Barnahus. I will meet them at Barnahus, where they can view their DVD evidence, which would be normally prior to a trial. In that case, we brought her. She came to Dublin. We've done a pre-trial in the court in Dublin. Showed her the week before. Showed her around the court where she would give evidence, what the interview room was like. She was then in the courtroom, sat where the judge sits, could see what people would see of her, could look at the things. So it was very, very worthwhile doing. And ironically, this was a very, very difficult case. But one of the questions that she asked me on our way to go to this trial was, or to this pre-trial, one of her big questions is where could she get a particular drink, and was that for sale inside the courthouse? So her whole thing was, I need to have this drink and I need to sit here and I need to do this. So we could reassure her, show her where she could sit, show her where she could have time out. I showed her her own room, and she was a lot more confident then in giving the evidence. And the next one then will be following several engagements. Following several engagements, talking through process and supported young person. This was a young person who had made a disclosure initially and was having a lot of difficulty in deciding whether or not to make the formal complaint and to do the specialist interview with the Gardaí. So it took a number of engagements with her and chats, and letting her talk through her issues and her anxieties, and why she didn't want to do it, why she did want to do it, what would happen if she did do it, what's the stages. So we talked through all that, and then again, after a length of time, then she decided that she did want to go forward with the complaint and to engage with the specialist interview process. And again, that is still ongoing. And another young person then that I had, again, it coming from a difficult background, and due to the trauma she had through the disclosure that she made, she felt that school was an issue, and she had kind of not gone to school, had poor attendance, was acting out in school. So we negotiated with the school for her to go back on a part-time basis. Her parent wasn't very articulate and said that, and asked me if I could represent them. So I said, well, I'm not going to represent you, but I will come with you and I will support you, which I did. So that one worked out quite well. So she started going back to school on a half-day basis, and then built that up over a term, over 2 terms, and he's back at school full-time now as well. So that was a good result. And again, escorted a young person to Dublin from the west of Ireland to do her specialist interview. And again, going back to a previous conversation, that was because we hadn't got a translator available at that time in that language in the west of Ireland. And going back to what happened there was, this young person did have a forensic examination in Galway with an interpreter present. But because of the content of that forensic and the disclosure, the interpreter she couldn't continue with the forensic with that. She broke down and couldn't deal with it. That's kind of where my conversation came out around how the translators should be trauma trained and know what the expectations of them are during when they are actually translating for child sexual abuse cases. So discussed safety. We had a young boy who, almost 17, who was engaging in meeting with older males online, and he kind of didn't understand the safety around engaging with people online. And also this young person hadn't disclosed his sexuality within his family. So I worked with him in that, and brought him to a point where he was able to disclose that to his family, and put him in contact with different organisations who would support his sexuality and him going forward. So that was a very worthwhile piece that I think that we've done. And again, another young person who going through a custody process. I mean, this is a huge on top of, and as you all know, this can cause where there's two families, a child from kind of two families, separated parents or separated carers. Custody process is going on top of the disclosure, thrown into the middle of all that and what that young person is going through. So supporting the young person through that. And again, that support involved just explaining what was going to happen, how they might have to give evidence, how it was affecting them, what help they could get with that.
Helen, sorry to interrupt. We are running out of time. Just a heads up, so you need to.
Okay, perfect. We can just go on. I'm almost finished. Very, very quickly finish. On to the next slide, then, please. Child participation again. I'm just going to say, obviously, this is something that I've been involved with. Barnahus have got a strategy in place, and we're looking at that, and we are continuously updating and working through that implementation. And obviously, the other piece I will say is that on the Barnahus Quality Standards toolkit, I was asked to do an audio clip as to how I introduce myself and what I have to do and what I say to young people. That is available on that toolkit if anyone's interested in that one. So we can fly on to the next slide, please. Again, we can fly on. It's all there. People can have a read if they want to. So the Journeys Project, you all know what that is, and just very happy to be involved with that, and looking forward to the end conference, and happy to have been involved in that. So yeah, so then the next slide. So planning for the future. I suppose, yeah, as it says, participating in the end project, continuous monitoring of the child participation, and promotion of everything that's good that we do around the youth advocate role. Next slide. That's just our collaboration partners in Ireland, if anyone just wants to have a look at that. And next slide. Thank you very much for listening. And I would just say one thing, that hopefully if everyone in their work and in everything they do, whether they're from policymakers to managers to frontline workers, please ask yourself, is this in the best interest of the child? And if you think it is, great. And if you think it isn't, please work on it. Thank you very much for listening to me. Next slide, please. My contact details, obviously, and I'm available for any questions and answers. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen, for a super interesting presentation of your work. And just continue to write the questions in the Q&A at the in the screen. I will continue by inviting Elisabeth Kjellander, the Child Liaison of Save the Children Sweden, to talk about the Child Liaison role in a Swedish context. Welcome, Elisabeth.
Thank you, Libertad, and thank you, Helen. So I'm Elisabeth Kjellander, as Libertad said, and I'm a social worker, and I have been working at Barnahus setting since the start in Sweden. So this is a very interesting project, and I'm so happy to be a part of that. So next slide. Next, yes, here it is, the business card, the poster, what children has got in Sweden. And this is just in Swedish, but it says, I'm your child liaison, and I'm here for you. And as you see, my photo, you who has been to Barnahus have the right to get information about the forensic process, help and support for your well-being, participate in a decision which concerns you, and to feel safe. And you can phone or write to me. So next one. I also will want to talk about the house with the 4 rooms, which I think is very important. Martin and Helen talked about that too. It's so important to fill all the rooms. No one can't be missing. And the ceiling under the roof there is a very important one too. It says knowledge. And Barnahus is supposed to be, it's a very important one to be the knowledge center for the region, I think. So next one. And this, I always show this picture because it's show what it means really. All the pieces of a puzzle are needed to see the whole child. And it doesn't matter if it's a small piece or a big one. You can't see the whole puzzle without those pieces. And that's what Barnahus is about, the cooperation between all those professions. And that also reminds, it's the child we will see here. Thank you. Next one. Here we have 33 Barnahus in Sweden. It's quite a lot. And we hope to be more. You can see here 247 out of 290 municipalities has got Barnahus. But the red areas, as you can see, there's many children in Sweden who can't get the access to a Barnahus. And that's very important. And it's a challenge because up in the north, it's rural areas and it's long distance to go to. So it's a challenge, actually. So next one. So this Journeys project, and I'm so happy to be joining it because we have focused now a lot of the multi-professional team on track to get them on track to be. It hasn't been that easy journey in Sweden to fill all the rooms at all Barnahuses. But now we have agreements, routines, joint training. We have Barnafrid as the National Knowledge Center, who are responsible for the networking meetings and for trainings. And also we have a quality review, but it was more than 10 years ago. So we have worked a lot of that. And I have to say that I'm also glad that Save the Children is a big part of this, because Save the Children has been active and working a lot to get Barnahus started in Sweden, and that Save the Children still is. That's a good thing, I think, and very important. Next, yes. So now we can focus to the child and have the child's focus on what's important for the child. And we also, as it said in the last slide, the Convention on the Rights of the Child was adopted as a law in Sweden in 2020. So now it's so good to focus on that one. And the target group we have in Sweden is children under the age of 18 who are suspected of being abused to physical abuse in close relationships, sexual abuse regardless of relationship, also have witnessed domestic violence. There was a law 2021 that it's a crime to let a child be witness or even hearing violence in the home. So that's a very important target group. We have also children with problematic sexual behavior, abusive to other children. And so we have, I think we have finally got the children has right to not be exposed to all sorts of violence. Next slide, please. So here we have children who have reported physical abuse by a parent are most common at Barnahus in Sweden. And in the Barnahus I have been working in, I think that's also for the rest of Sweden, about 25% of the children coming to Barnahus is because of physical abuse from in the relationship of a family. And this one is important too. The most common scenario is that the child protection assess that the children can continue to live at home with the person who abused them. Next slide, please. So you can't see that picture which I had there. I'm sorry, it didn't come up. But when is it a risk for the child to fall through the cracks? So we have listed it before the child forensic interview, information on the way from preschool and school. And in Sweden, the parent doesn't know about the referral or that the child is going to the forensic interview because, and they have got a special lawyer to be responsible for the child and to get the child to the Barnahus. The child comes to Barnahus with a known and safe person, mostly from school, a teacher, preschool teacher or so. So and that's because we don't want to the child to be told what to say in the forensic interview, for example. And here is also all these highlights here is an important role for a child liaison to highlight and discuss how to do it in the most child-friendly way. So, and after the child interview, what information can the child get about what is happening now in the police investigation? What other measures are planned or even possible? How how the child can have an opinion on what is planned? And after prosecutor decision, what happens then? Does the child have the opportunity to ask questions? Yes? Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't got more than 10 minutes.
And 2 more minutes and then we have to continue, unfortunately.
Okay. I'm sorry, I can't. Next slide then. Next slide, please. So the pilot study, I started in October and now it's May, and this is my last week, so it's very short time. But due to the fact that the child may be confused by meeting another professional, there's so many professionals, the social worker, the police, the lawyer, everyone will meet. We decided that it's too much to be another person there. And it's also about the confidentiality legislation to have another one there. So the Barnahus Linköping has information at their homepage The working groups, multidisciplinary lawyers have got information, and they have changed routines. At the meeting after forensic interview, the decision is made who will give the child information. And after the child have met therapists from the social workers, they also give the information about this card. And also the staff at Barnahus do that when they invite the children for information meetings. They have posters and business cards in the various rooms and so on. But only one call. Next slide, please. It was a parent of a 12-year-old girl who has been exposed to sexually online, and the police identified her in an investigation where a man is in custody. And the girl didn't want to talk at all with anyone. So the mother called me, and we have also a follow-up call. And the girl has now got contact with Barnahus. Next slide, please. So we decided to have 5 more Barnahus where they have information in the waiting rooms, so the children can call. But we haven't got any more calls. You can see it's a small one, big city, new one from the north, and so on. So we thought that maybe Barnahus Linköping is such a well-developed Barnahus, so maybe we would get more when more Barnahuses would give this information. Okay, next one. So I also think that it's very short time after this meeting at the Barnahus, the child has to know what to ask about. So later on in the process, I think it will come up more questions and answers, questions. And most children who comes to Barnahus are also very young, preschool, primary and middle school. Can they call themselves? We have to have permission from the caregiver. And that's an issue we have to talk about more. Yes, I said before, a very short pilot period, 6 months. So next, please. And my thoughts about Barnahus. There are so many good examples out there in all these 33 Barnahuses. And it shouldn't be up to each Barnahus to invent all methods by themselves. So next slide, please. So I would like to see, and I'm sure, a national governance to ensure that it's very important. And also sufficient staff so that there is a child liaison function at each Barnahus. That's very important. Next one, please. And also this function is also very important to follow up with the children in different stages of the process, both legal, social, crisis intervention, and treatment, to capture their experiences and to see if they need anything further. Also have a CAB, Children's Advisory Board. I think that is so valuable information you will get from them. And of course, Barnafrid is a national knowledge center, but Barnafrid doesn't have the mandate to govern. So I hope to see that, and there is a procurement to that where they propose that the Crime Victim Compensation and Support Authority could be this agency or organization to do this.
Elizabeth, we need to finish.
Yes, and the last word is here. Maybe all these 33 Barnahus has the function, child liaison, and maybe a national chat phone for abused children at, for example, Save the Children would be good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. We are unfortunately running out of time, so we have an interview with Anna Pettersson, social worker at Barnahus Linköping.
Hello, Anna. Very
Hi.
nice to have you here. Could you start off with presenting yourself?
Okay, nice to be here in digital form. My name is Anna Pettersson. I'm a social worker and I work as a team leader here at Barnahus in Linköping, Sweden.
Thank you. And unfortunately, you couldn't attend the webinar today, Wednesday. So we have this conversation on Monday instead. And the webinar will now be in 2 days from now. A little bit confusing here. Okay, and I'm going we've talked a bit, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and feel free to answer them however you like. And let's start off with this question. So you have worked with Elisabeth Kjellander as your child liaison at Barnahus Linköping, Sweden for some time now. What are your experiences of this so far in this Journeys project?
Well, in the beginning, or all the way through the project, we really have done everything we can to see that the information reaches the children in all kind of ways we can figure out. We have done that also through our homepage and so on. And we talked about it in a working group, and Elizabeth has been here in the working group with all the professionals that are in our collaboration. So from our point of view, we have really done all we can to kind of try to reach out and try to spread the word about Barnombud, this child liaison. And everyone has been positive, even though some maybe haven't really understood what the point of it, because just another person coming in for what, you know. But no one has been reluctant to this, so everyone has been positive. That's good. And Elizabeth has been here a couple of times as well, visiting us, and for us it was very good that she really know about Barnahus in Sweden, since the project time was pretty short. It was that she had such a huge knowledge about it before, so we can go straight into the point what it was all about. But as I understood when I talked to Elizabeth, there's not that many children who have called her. So that's what we know.
Yeah, that's what we know, which is unfortunate. But you're saying then, Anna, that all the staff in Barnahus in the 4 different rooms and in the county have been very positive to trying to implement a child liaison. But even that hasn't been sufficient for us to reach out to children who have been to Barnahus.
That's true.
Okay. One could think that Barnahus Linköping is not a new Barnahus. It's been around for some time, and you've worked quite a bit with child-friendly information, with a book for children coming to you, with a website with information for children in different age groups. Could one think that a child liaison in your Barnahus is redundant, since you do many of the things that we think that a child liaison could contribute with? What are your thoughts on
that? I know we are a very well-functioned Barnahus in many kind of ways, and we have developed many kind of tools to really emphasize the children's right to information and participation and so on. But still, there's so many things we can do better, of course. But as when we have talked about it here in our team and also in the broader the working group with all the cooperation partners, the thought has been, okay, can we really add another new person into this process? Because the children in this process, they are meeting so many new people when they come to Barnahus for interviews. So we want to minimize it as much as possible. So for us, it's more about, okay, the things that we want to gain with a Barnahus, with a child liaison, maybe we can, instead of emphasize on all the different kind of professions that are in this process already, that they're actually doing their job in a better way when it comes to information, when it comes to participation, maybe. How can we kind of help them and make sure that they are doing as good job as possible when it comes to these kind of matters, rather than adding a new person, maybe.
Okay.
That's according to how it looks in Sweden.
Yeah, and in your specific Barnahus, because one could think that it might be different in a Barnahus that is new and maybe it doesn't even have all the 4 different rooms. Maybe a child liaison would be a very important function in such a Barnahus. But if I put it this way then, Anna, do you think that it could be a good idea to formulate the child liaison as a function rather than a specific person, a function whose job is to ensure a couple of things, and it's up to each Barnahus to decide together who is going to have this function. Maybe it's you as part of the county, or maybe in another Barnahus it might be someone from the child psychiatry, or even the police. What's your thought about that?
Well, in the best way, there should be a person following the child from the beginning, from the very beginning to the end of the process. And here, most naturally, that's the social welfare, child protection services that does that. But still, they're not part of the whole process, because maybe they enclose their social assessment before the police's investigation is closed, for example. So, and that's where we have the things we can do better in our process. Here in Linköping, I think that I know that we are missing a lot of children who miss out on information, and wonder what happens next and so on. I know that. So even though we think, okay, we work pretty well, we are far from perfect in that matters, of course. So, but as it looks now, it's difficult to get a person through the whole process, mostly according to the laws of secrecy and the privacy laws, that you can't really have a person that can follow the child in the process all the way, because you're not allowed to. In different kind of people have the right to have access to the child and to the information around the child, to be able to answer some questions that the child might have or the parents might have. So it's difficult.
It is difficult. It's a difficult process, and it's a difficult process. It's a difficult journey, but is what you're saying that you can see that it might be challenging for many children to go through the whole journey, and it would be good for maybe not all children, but many children, to have someone who's following them through the whole journey and help them understand what happened now, what's going to happen next, someone to call if they are unsure about something that has just happened, or even complaining about what has happened.
Yes.
Okay.
And as it looks now, we can have like the social worker, for example, or the special representative of the child, the lawyer, child's lawyer.
Yeah.
That is instead of the parents here in Sweden, as a part of the process. They can answer some things, of course, and they can be that person. But as I said before, we have to remind ourselves, all our professions in the process, we have to remind ourselves to do our job as good as possible when it comes to these kind of things. Yeah. Information to the child, and keep them kind of just as information and participation. Okay, now we're doing that. This means this. We don't know anything now, but that is also information to tell the child.
That is also information. Yeah.
It's kind of because the more stressed you are, whatever profession you have, the more stressed you are, you're more like this, narrow-minded, and you don't. It's easier to get these things. So we kind of, if we can kind of, over and over again, reminding us about these things, there should be so much better for the children if we can do that as a start.
Because we know that many children who come to Barnahus for the first time have high stress levels, and we know when you have high stress levels, it's very hard to understand what's being told to you, even though it's in a child-friendly language, because so much going on. So we know that written information, repetition, someone calling you up is something that helps children and even adults in stress to grasp what's happening. Okay, so you're saying many adults around the child, an obstacle to have even another adult as a child liaison being there, but you also, but still you see the point in someone being there, holding the child's hand metaphorically throughout the journey. Someone.
Of course. You also have to remember that in Sweden, the threshold for a prosecutor to start these preliminary investigations, the police assessments, is very low. So many of our cases is not that severe. If it sounds bad to kind of grade them, but if you should, they're not that severe. So maybe it can be a child who's been here for an interview and the reason that the child has been here is because, for example, his mother has hit him once, like a slap in the face. That can be enough. So maybe that's not in all cases that much need for crisis support and things, but it is important. Information is important still. But these children, maybe if it is a 6-year-old, they thought it was a nice trip with my teacher to Barnahus. It's not a big deal for them, but still we have to remind ourselves to inform the child. But on the other hand, if you compare with some other countries in Europe, for example, many of the Barnahus have more sexual abuse cases, many most severe cases, and it's more even important than to kind of follow the child all the way. Here we have, I'm not saying that it's not good to follow the child in those cases that we have many of them. It's always good, but you have to remember that we have, it differs a lot.
Yeah, it's a wide range of of sexual abuse for years and years, and then there is also this more mild child abuse or violence. And you can see that for some children, it's important, of course, with information that the child can understand, but the child liaison, someone following the child, is not as important as in those more severe cases.
So I think so. And also, sometimes we talk about that it's good, we have to inform children, but sometimes we also have to think about what is good information. Sometimes you have too much information to the children, what they actually need to know. So it's also a balance, what is actually things that they need to know and they can understand the knowledge of.
So how much information, how the information is presented, but also how much information, and maybe also when the information is presented to the child.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing that we, sorry.
No, we talked about it here. We say that we have kind of figure out that having a person here, a new person in our Barnahus, for example, we don't think really that would be good for the child, because that's just adding new people, you know. But what can be good is, as you mentioned here, more like a national person, like we have like a BRIS, Child's Right in Society or something, you know, like any child can call, and you can kind of, because it takes time also before the children get to know this, and the Children's Right in Society they know about, but Barnahus, not many children know that it even exists until you've been here yourself. So it takes time also to kind of make them get to know
the function and how to use the function.
Yes.
Okay. So Elisabeth has been a child liaison at Barnahus Linköping for quite a short time. So maybe if we had worked for a longer period of time in this project and managed to reach out even more to children in the society, maybe things would change. And maybe with some kind of national child liaison function in some way could fill a gap, possibly.
That's true. Yeah, we can do that. But when we have informed, if I, for example, is in this adjacent room listening to an interview, asking the social worker to give this information to the child afterwards, for example, about Elisabeth. And so there's so many things we have a little checklist. Okay, who's going to tell the child when the prosecutor decision comes? Do you have this kind of after the interview model that coming home to the family afterwards? There's so many things that we already check. So this kind of thing with the Barnahus, with the child liaison, has just been another thing. Okay, how can we motivate this as well? You know, we have so many things already that on our checklist. Understand? So for us, this was kind of it has a positive.
Vibe to it.
Bias, but still it was sometimes difficult for us to kind of motivate, because there are so many other things we have to motivate as well when it comes to these important things around a child.
Which could maybe be an argument for a child liaison not being a function, but rather a specific person who attends these matters and remind you. Another thing that we have discussed throughout this project is pros and cons of the child liaison being in this project in Sweden employed by Save the Children and not the county, not being in the judicial system, employed there, or in the police, or in the healthcare. What do you see the pros and cons of the child liaison being in civilsamhället, in the civil society? It's a tricky matter.
Yes, it's a tricky matter, because the positive thing can be that it is really an overall function. It is not the prosecutor, it is not the social worker. So that's kind of, that can be positive, that you're a neutral function, neutral person. On the other hand, being that neutral, you can't really have an insight. You can't really know anything. You can't get information. You don't have the right to get information. So if the child asks you something, you can't answer because you don't know. If the child would ask her social worker, that person could answer. If the child will ask the prosecutor or the police that had the interview, that person can answer the child, because that person knows. According to the laws of secrecy, that person knows what to answer. But if you're kind of more the neutral person, it's more like you can talk in common terms about this is how Barnahus works, this is how the judicial system works, and if it's okay, with your parents. They can tell me the name of the social worker, and maybe I can call her up or him up. Of course, you can do it that way. Indirectly, you can maybe get some answers. But that's kind of the positive and negative things, I think.
Well put. Thank you very much. Is there anything more that you feel that we haven't touched upon now that you want to add to this short interview or talk or whatever we should call it?
I just want to summon that, okay, we are a well-functioned Barnahus, but that doesn't mean that we believe that we are doing everything perfect. That I think that can be a reason and a need for a child liaison or a kind of function like that. As the Barnahus has been here, it hasn't been. We haven't seen the need for it. I think that not many children had called Elizabeth. We weren't surprised because that need is not filled by a child liaison. I think we have to figure out different ways how we can fulfill that need in here in Linköping, and I think also in the country.
But I hear you then saying, and correct me if I understand you wrong, the Barnahus model is a good idea. It was not as good before when the child was supposed to go to many different offices and talk to many people, different officials, and tell the same thing over and over again many times. So the Barnahus model is a good idea, but it's not like the end station. We are still in a process where we have to work on this to ensure that children who come to Barnahus aren't re-traumatized, but they understand what's happening, and the journey helps them out in their process to move on in life.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much, Anna, and see you soon.
See you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
I will ask all the speakers to turn their camera on, and I will read some questions that have been coming in before we move on to Sophia and the end conference. So one of the questions we have are, does this model provide residential accommodation services for child abuse victims? If yes, for how long? And I think that this question was for Helen.
No, Barnahus West doesn't provide residential accommodation, but obviously TUSLA, who's a child and welfare organisation in Ireland, they would have assessed the accommodation needs of the young person. So if anything else further was needed, they would be the organisation that would make sure that the child was catered for accordingly.
Thank you, Helen. We also have a question. Is there any child who cannot be referred, and why?
No, as you've seen from the referral list there, I think that covers most young people, but obviously any child can be referred, and that child would be assessed on its individuality and what their needs were. In my time, I have never seen a child being refused, so I would say no, that every child could come to the table and then their individual needs be discussed.
Thank you. Yes. I have a question that is both for Elizabeth and Helen. What have you experienced is the biggest challenge to implement the role of child liaison? And I think Elizabeth talked about it a little bit, but maybe you would like to answer again, Elizabeth?
Yes, I think it has to be resources. So if you have, resources enough to have this function, you have to decide it, and national guidelines for that too. How many staff do you have to have with this and this population, for example, so you can cover the function. That's the most important thing, I think.
So the biggest challenge you would say is lack of resources and
Yes, you have to have guidelines for that.
Yeah. Okay. And Helen, do you agree, or is it different for you?
In my experience, resources haven't been a problem. But I suppose the biggest one I have seen is the exchange of information. Is GPDR and data protection would be huge. I think we have a different system here, so we can't work with the young people without parental consent. So I think the sharing of information, so I feel that people who are working directly should be aware of all issues surrounding that child. So I think GPDR or data consent would be the biggest challenge I personally have found in during the role.
Thank you. One more question before we move on. Are there specific age groups or disabilities that you think or have experienced is more challenging to reach and or support as a child liaison?
If I answer that, I suppose the challenges for me would have been different languages and interpreters. And I find I do a lot of my work initially through the Translate app on WhatsApp, because that's how I engage, because I don't speak 8 languages. And I think you lose content sometimes when you're doing something like that with the Translate app. Yeah, I think that would be a difficulty or a disadvantage to the young person. I do try the best I can. And obviously, as I previously said, interpreters is a huge part going forward, because we have such a multicultural community here now in Ireland. That's a huge part that really does have to be sorted out. I think across Europe that needs to be sorted. Like, everyone's facing that, that our interpreters are properly trained, trauma trained and supervised for their own welfare as well afterwards.
I would say the youngest children, as you have to have the parents' consent, and we have the, as I said before, the physical abuse and within the family, and the parents has to approve of that.
And from where do you receive more referrals of children, from professionals or children themselves?
Again, for us, I suppose the disclosures, our referrals would come from disclosures originally, and that would be coming from the children or the young people, and they would make, as you all know, they make the disclosures to schools, to family members. So for me, they all come from organisations. They're coming directly from Barnahus. Yeah, I mean, the children have to make the disclosure first, and that's the first protocol, obviously. So I would say my referrals come mainly from professionals who the young people have made contact, or the parents would have been in contact with the TUSLA or with the Gardaí, and the referrals then come to us from there. So the children obviously are primarily.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we can't include more questions for now. We want to invite Sofia Millenmois, the analyst at Barnafrid Linköping, to tell us more about the end conference of the Journeys project in November in Linköping. Linda, are you with us? And thank you, Helen and Elizabeth.
Sofia.
Yes, Libertad, I'm here, and thank you so much for the opportunity to inform you about the upcoming end conference for the project. As you said, my name is Sofia Millenmois, and I'm at Barnafrid. Barnafrid is a national center for knowledge concerning violence against children in Sweden. And Barnafrid, in the Journeys project, we have the main responsibility for all the dissemination activities, and we also co-lead the planning of the end conference together with CBSS. You can take the next slide, please. And the purpose of the conference, we have a subtitle of the conference, Ensuring Children's Right to Information and Participation at Barnahus. And of course, we will summarize what the project has accomplished during the project time, but we will give some extra focus about the child liaison role, and both Helen and Elizabeth and Linda Jonsson, they will inform us as they did today about the child liaison role, both in Ireland and Sweden. We will also give you a presentation and demonstration about the Journeys app, and a demonstration and presentation about the Journeys child log. And since the purpose of the project is to make the situation better for children, it has been very important for us to make the children's voice heard during the conference day. And therefore, we are very happy to welcome a group of young people from the Children's Advisory Board in Ireland. As Helen mentioned, they had played a very active role in the project. And they will participate throughout the day and have an active role in the project. We will also share lessons we have learned during the project time and some thoughts about the future. The next slide, please. And the conference day, it will take place in Sweden, in Linköping, at the 20th of November. And we will offer you a hybrid event where you can participate online and on site in Linköping. And the target groups will be Barnahus professionals and authorities and civil society that might be involved in Barnahus. Next slide. And we are very, very proud to have Laura Landi as our keynote speaker. She is a professor of international children's rights at the School of Education at the Queen's University of Belfast. And she will give us an online presentation under the theme Journey Through Barnahus, a Child Participatory Culture. And we hope that many of you can join us during the day so you can have the opportunity to listen to Laura. Next slide. And I think there might be one more. Otherwise, the registration will open in June, and we will give you more information about the program and the registration information. So thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Where can we find the registration?
Yes, we will. All the partners will spread it in their own channels, and we will put it at Barnafrid. We have a website for the Journeys project. You can find under Barnafrid at liu.se.
Thank you. So it will be a super interesting end conference, and I also hope that many of you will join us there to listen to the different experience of running the project and what we've learned and so on. We were a bit stressed about time, but we do have 10 minutes left, so I will read one more question to Helen and Elizabeth. We have a question that says, was there a big difference in how the service was offered to young people in Sweden and Ireland? Are you with us, Helen and Elizabeth?
Yeah, I am. I obviously don't know how to answer that, obviously, on behalf of Sweden. I'll leave that one to Elizabeth. It is being offered to the young people, all the Barnahus West, all the young people who come through Barnahus West will have the offer of services from the youth advocate. And again, that will hopefully be through the app when it's up and running. But at the moment, it is done kind of, I suppose, orally and by direction of the manager. But when we have our information packs, my details and what I do will be included in that information pack as well, so the young person will have access from there. So I don't know how it works in Sweden, obviously.
Elizabeth, would you like to answer?
Yes, all children has, of course, access to contact the child liaison, but I think also, as I said before, it's difficult to do that maybe. And I haven't been in person at the Barnahus, as we had an agreement on that it could be confusing with more people coming in there the same day as the forensic interview.
And why do you think it was difficult for the children to contact the child liaison?
I think it was too early in the process for the older ones too, because they have, I think it's a very developed, well-developed Barnahus. The children get very much information. They have a special lawyer to follow them and give information. They meet the social worker, and they have Barnahus, the staff there to meet them. So after maybe when the prosecutor has decided what to do in the forensic interview, there could be more questions. And after more months when they, oh, why did this and that happen? And questions will arise. Then it might be more young children to contact.
So to implement the child liaison role, you would need more time.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. But I think also it's not difficult to have this function at Barnahus themselves.
Okay. Not like a person from the outside, but as a part of Barnahus.
Yes.
In the interview with Anna Pettersson that's going to be uploaded that didn't work properly now, Anna talked quite a bit about problem early in the process when the child first arrives to Barnahus and is most often very stressed and get a lot of information, and in that the information too about the child liaison, it's hard to remember, and it's even hard to understand as a child that this is a function that I could have use of. So she talked quite a bit about that. And she also talked about the difficulty with the confidentiality in Sweden in Elizabeth's role from Save the Children, coming from outside, not from one of the 4 different rooms. She's from a new room, really. And that's an obstacle that they saw too, that it might be a good idea with a child liaison coming from outside to kind of look into the 4 different rooms and raise his or her voice about what's working and what's not working. But it's an obstacle since you're not part of the legislation of any of the 4 different rooms. So I would recommend look at the video. She has many different interesting things on the topic.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think it's very important that the function is there to have the child's eyes and follow up with the children, and that you can do that at Barnahus.
Yes, and also Linda Jonsson at Marie Cederschiölds University that was supposed to join us today is doing an evaluation of the child liaison role in Sweden and Ireland. And she will make a report of that during the summer. And so that also we will hear more about the challenges of implementing the role and what is needed and so on to implement the role in Barnahus. Thank you so much to all the speakers and all the people listening. Before we close the webinar, I would like Heidi to launch the final poll and ask the participants to please take a few minutes and answer the questions on the screen. This is super valuable information for us to take with us in the rest of the project. I also want to tell you that we have a 5th webinar coming up in November. The invitation is not out yet, but it will be. And we will talk about the child log and the app that will be finished in November and produced, and the final product will be presented. So I think that will be super interesting to listen to, and I hope all of you want to join us then. So once again, thank you so much to all the speakers for sharing your knowledge and experience. And thank you to all the participants who listened today and for giving us questions and for answering both a poll in the beginning and the end. So thank you very much. Does anybody have any final words before we close up? No. Okay, so be sure to go on the Child Hub website where you can see the whole webinar, but also the interview that Martin did with Anna Pettersson. That was really good. So it was a shame we couldn't share it with you today, but you can see it there. Thank you for today and have a good week.